Scaling up is a major killer to trading accounts, and you can't blame aspiring traders for it because society has simply conditioned us and conditioned them in that way. So why would this be the case? Well, because it's logical if we think about it and how we've been growing up, go to school, even if you play video games, and I'll use an example there. When we get good at something, we get better at something, it's like, okay, well then you take the next step. Like you go from level 1 to level 2, level 3. And that's great. And so in a video game, for example, if you go from level 1, level 2, most of the time, depends upon the game, I guess, but most of the time, you have a floor. So you get to level 2, and now you're trying to get past level 2 to go to level 3. Well, you don't have to go back to do level 1 again. You got past level 1 or stage 1. You're now on level 2. And if you fail and fail and fail, that's fine. You keep failing on level 2. You don't have to go back and redo level 1. Now, I guess if you fail too many times, depending upon the game, you might have to. But it's this concept of like, I did that. Like I accomplished that. I got past that. I passed that class. I did that thing. I don't have to go back and do it again. So we are conditioned to simply level up, but without many consequences. But the problem in trading is that when we level up, we can absolutely fall back. If we start at $1,000 or we go to 10,000 or we go to 100,000, we could easily fall back below that level that we started at, or we grow an account to $100,000, and now we can absolutely fall back below that $100,000 threshold. What that does mentally absolutely plays into our psychology and how we then execute going forward. So how do we go about this? How do we do this? I want to go through an example of my own situation and share how I approach scaling up. But first, a quick word from the sponsor, Iron Beam.
Welcome to Iron Beam, the future of futures trading. With our cutting-edge chart trading feature and 300+ indicators, you can now trade directly off the chart anytime, anywhere. Delivering seamless trading across all platforms, the Iron Beam journey is supported by 24-hour trader support, low day trade margins, and no account minimums. Iron Beam brings the future into the present. Join now and augment your trading experience.
All right, so let me explain my situation. My situation is right now I have been trading the same system, the same strategy for over 18 months. And I've used the first, let's call it the first year, to be like, okay, let's make sure we know what we're doing, how we're doing this, how the strategy works, kind of not the inside and out, because you're always discovering new things and you're always improving it, but like the basics, the core of it. So I spent that first year really understanding that, and now I'm like, okay, it works. I have the data to prove it. I've tracked it. Now let's scale up, but let's do so in a way that makes sense and that won't allow me to spiral out of control like I have in the past. So that's been the situation. Now, I've been going about that much slower than what I think people would like, or what I, looking back, would like to do, but I'm okay with it. How I think about scaling is this. When you are doing really, really well in trading, we know that that does not last forever. You simply, if you've been doing it long enough, you're going to go through, red streaks. You're going to go through streaks where your strategy does not work the same way. And if you trade multiple strategies, first off, I find that hard to believe you can consistently do that over time, but maybe you can. I'm not saying you can. It's possible. I just find that hard to believe based off my own experience, personally. But if you do that, it's going to take a mental toll. And then how do you handle the points when you should scale up, when you should throttle back? Do you throttle back? Do you ever scale up? How do you handle all those things? Because you inevitably will go through a period in time where your strategy's not working, the market's not aligning, and you're just not, the gears are not turning, it's just not working. And so how you manage your risk ultimately is how you survive that period. But if you did really, really well and you start scaling up, let's say you trade an average position size of $1,000. Simple. You risk $1,000 on a trade. Keep it simple. On average. And now you want to scale up. So now you want to double down, or you want to double your size. And now you want to risk $2,000 per trade because your account's grown and you feel good. there's a very good chance that you're going to do that off the back of an already pretty good period. So maybe you have you've been doing okay, you're making some strides, and then you have a month or two of really good action, right? Action's working, the strategy's working really well, you're making a lot of money relative to the past couple months, and you're like, oh, I've got this down, let's scale it up to make more. The problem is that the market doesn't work that way. The market doesn't give a fuck. It doesn't care. It literally does not care. It does not care what it's going to switch things up on you. That's just how it goes. It's going to do the same things, and they're not going to work the same way, and you're going to see the same setups that are not going to work. And now you're going to say, what do I do? Well, if you start to scale up, you're now going to be like at a loss for words or at a loss for what to do, because you're not sure if I should now scale back down, change my strategy, or quit altogether because I've blown the account. And that's how a lot of people end up failing. They spiral because they start doing something that's working. They say, okay, I'm getting good. I'm going to scale up because that's what society tells me. I've been conditioned through school, through video games, through everything. I've been conditioned. I get good. I reach the next level, and I can now do better. I can increase my position size. I can increase my risk because now I've gotten better. I've achieved this. I've done this. I've passed these levels. I've passed these classes. Let's move on to the next piece. Only to find that when you do that, now all of a sudden things change up on you, and now you're risking more money, but now you go through a red streak, or you go through a period where the market's not aligning, and it could simply be, if you just let the time play out, it'll be a bump in the road if you manage your risk, have a strategy, and things ultimately end up working out, and you trust the data you've built up and what you're doing, it'll be okay. But there is a period where you're going to have to deal with that question, you're going to have to deal with the doubt, and many of us can't. We either spiral or we triple down, quadruple down because we're pissed, try to make it all back, and there goes the account. Or that gets to our heads to the point where now we change things up, and we had all this data on this strategy, but now we're doing this. And now we don't know, so we don't have the confidence to continue on, and we're questioning what we should be doing. So now you have a couple losses, you question things, change your strategy, you lose some more, try to figure things out, and now next thing you know, you either spiral or you're back to square one because you didn't stick with what was originally working because you thought you had to change it. That is the core of the problem when people are trying to scale up. I have lived it, I see it, and I see people do it all the time, because it happens all the time. It's fundamentally a psychology problem, but at the end of the day, there's a way around it. And what that really is when you simply trust the process of what you're doing, and you simply have your strategy, and you stick to it, and you make sure you're always taking a step back. Did I execute the same way? If you are executing the same way that you've been executing when it was working, keep doing that, manage your risk. You'll go through the rough patch, you'll come out the other side, and you'll eventually make it back. In my example, I have very slowly but surely started to scale things up. And there was a period of time where I had this exact situation where I started to scale things up, but it was after I did very well. And then I went through a period where we had some losses. And now I'm like, oh my God, I almost gave back all of the money that I made this year because I scaled up. And now I go through a red streak. But you ride the wave, and now you end up making the money back and more. And I'm finishing the year out at a high. But that's because I suck through the inevitable red streak or the inevitable rockiness that we're going to have to deal with when you are trading one strategy or trading the same way. It's going to happen. It's how you manage that ultimately gets you out the other side. The other piece, which people are going to say, yo, do not do this, and I understand the approach. When do you want to scale up? Well, it actually makes sense if you've got a proven strategy, and this is kind of how I approach it now, to scale up, increase your size when you're not doing well. If you can mentally handle that. So if you know that you've done this a million times, you've done this multiple times, and you can get through the other side, and you're not worried about it, and you trust the strategy, then why would you be scared to, let's say you wanted to go from risking $1,000 per trade to risking $2,000 per trade. Why, after losing 9 out of the last 12, losing 16 out of the last 20, why wouldn't you think about maybe starting to scale up because you wanted to a few weeks ago, but now you've been losing more, and so inevitably you'll go back on a green streak, or you'll have a better run at some point if you trust your data and your strategy, and the market will oscillate back and forth. why wouldn't you want to scale up then? That's what I do. That's my recommendation. That's actually the most recent time that I scaled up. It was actually as I was doing the worst. Not saying that I was blowing my account. I wasn't doing terrible. I was just under a break-even phase for like a few weeks. I was like, man, I'm just kind of like, the same things that I was doing last month or 2 months ago are just not hitting right now. And I was like, okay, not a big deal, right? You know, we've given back a little bit of the gains from the past few months, but it's not the end of the world. I know what I'm doing. I wanted to scale up, and I think I want to do so because I'm trading the same way. I'm trusting the strategy. Let's do so now. And I took on a little bit more risk per trade after that, and then eventually we've come out the other side further in the green. I know a lot of people will say that that's not the way to do it, but that's how my brain works, and especially when you have the confidence and you've been trading something for a long enough time with enough of a sample size, I don't think it is as big of a worry or as big of a deal as people make it. Sponsors and resources down below. If you are thinking about trading with leverage, which is kind of similar to sizing up, I have a video on the screen that'll talk more in depth about that if you're interested. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.